Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. In this one, of course, we're continuing on the Best 23 series, and today is the West Coast Eagles, who are really ushering in a new dawn under coach Andrew McQualter. This is his first senior gig after coming from a stint at Richmond as an assistant as well as the Melbourne Demons. So it's his first opportunity to be able to imprint his game style on an AFL team, and I think he's hit it at a really interesting transition point, just in the fact that they brought in a lot of new players, offloaded a few, and also brought in plenty of players in the draft. So I think this Best 23 is going to be really interesting. We'll kick in, as we always do, with the defense. So just having a look here, we've got, I guess, first of all, their problems in 2024 from a defensive point of view. I think they had McGovern back there, who was really good at winning the ball back. Barras is obviously really good at winning the ball back. But one area they really struggled in was conceding inside 50 marks. And you probably think, well, of course they did, because they concede a lot of inside 50s. But even if you draw the stat back to per inside 50 opposition marks, they still really struggled in that area. So as much as they had those, nice interceptors, those defenders that are pretty good on the eye, they weren't really able to compete from a one-on-one point of view. So the player, I think, that really shores that up for them going into 2025, and a player that, won his one-on-ones. He's a big body down there. It is Harry Edwards, and I think he is going to shore up this defensive line from a structural point of view. He's a big body, 200 centimetres, and he can take the opposition's best key forwards, and I think that's going to be really important for West Coast, for him to stay fit and just to be able to take those guys and so they don't have to worry about a forward getting off the leash. So he's going to do that. You're going to have McGovern doing what he always does there, intercepting the football. He does, obviously, that hurts you in some sense, because he's not going to be as accountable all the time as he flies for marks. Then the other key position player that you've got there is Ryan Marich, who was obviously taken as a number one pick in the mid-season draft a few years ago. He seems to be, or apparently is, training with the defensive group at the moment. So I think this is a really interesting experiment, I suppose, to throw him behind the ball. It is often a tactic if a player's not really working as a forward, to be able to put them into a different position behind the ball to see if they can reinvent themselves back there. So I think Marich looks like he could be he's played a couple of seasons of AFL now, so he's probably going to have the physicality to be able to play on some bigger bodied opposition. And we know that he does fly at the ball. He's got a lot of athleticism, so he's probably suited to be able to be winning the ball back. Whether he can, get that defensive one-on-one stuff down pat will be the issue, but I like it. I like it as an experiment, and that they're trying something different. So I think if these three players can stay fit for most of the season, the back line will be significantly better than it was last year. Just, playing players like Bazzo, who really weren't up to it, and probably having the balance slightly wrong in having Barras and McGovern as your two key position defenders there. The other one you've got, from a smaller defensive point of view and a lockdown perspective, if anyone watched my North Melbourne Best 23, I think the player there is Brady Hoff, similar to a Jackson Archer. He's just that guy that's going to take the opposition's most dangerous small forward. He's going to lock him down. He's really found a niche there in the last couple of seasons at being able to do that. I think when he first came in, they didn't really know what to do with him. Was he a halfback? Was he a wing? Was he sort of an attacking player? I think he's kind of settled now as a defensive lockdown player, and someone that he is a pretty smart footy IQ player, someone that can kind of drift off and get the switches going and that sort of thing. So if he can change direction a little bit and give an outlet, I think that's going to be really important. But the two offensive, or mainly the one offensive part of this back line, it's obviously McGovern winning the ball back, and then it's Ginbey, obviously. He's the one that has that dynamic power and pace, and that ball use coming out of the defensive 50. I think that's going to be so important for him to be able to, talking about changing the direction and hitting up players like Hoff, he's going to be the one that's going to have to wheel onto that left foot and, get the corridor kicks going and give them some dare off the half back line. So he's going to be important there. I think he looms as a midfield option, but in its current state, with having players like Yo and Reed and those big-bodied explosive players, I don't think you can really add another one in there at the moment. On the other side, I've got Duggan, who, not sort of thrilled about Duggan, but he is he's a pretty intelligent player. He sort of gets off the back of the stoppage and can kind of give you some ball retention. He's not super daring with kicks. He's not a great kick of the football, but probably at the stage that they're in with players like Edwards, Marich, Hoff, Ginbey, all young players, he sort of gives them a little bit of experience back there too. So I don't mind him starting, albeit it's probably not the most, adventurous sort of choice. But that'll be the back six. And I think if they can, again, it's going to come down to fitness a lot. If these guys can stay fit, I think that is a reasonable back six, and we can get some of the rookies coming in off the bench as well that we'll go into later. We go next to the midfield zone here. Now, you're going to be looking at this and thinking, what the heck is going on? So I've got inside the center square there, I've got Williams, Yeo, Liam Baker, and Tim Kelly. And you're probably thinking, where is Harley Reid? And why isn't it just Yeo, Kelly, and Reid, which seems like the obvious choice? But we have to look at some of the statistics and some of the areas that West Coast really struggled in 2024. And one of those was just pure clearance differential. They were minus 4.2 in that area. So they did struggle to get on top of teams and win clearances. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that they were too hard ball dominant in their contested possession stuff at clearance. So what do I mean by that? Elliot Yeo and Harley Reid are both, they're bigger bodies, they're tall players, but they're also thicker set, and they like that body contact, and they lack probably the ability to get separation in a meaningful way at stoppages. So they're very reliant on getting those hard ball. Yeo had pretty good clearance numbers, but consistently Harley Reid was probably too hard ball dominant and wasn't able to get enough cheaper, sort of easier ball where he can sort of get separation, read it quicker off hands, and then get away. Tim Kelly is really good at that. So I think looking overall, the balance of Yeo and Kelly as opposed to Yeo and Reid as a kind of starting combination, I think it just works a little bit better. The other element to that was how bad they were at defending clearance. And what I mean by that is defending scores from clearance. So they were really bad, and they just didn't have enough two-way runners in that midfield. And that's where Liam Baker comes in for me. So he's going to be there to be able to apply that pressure, get back on those opposition, really attacking offensive mids to be able to stop the bleeding, stop that scoring, and stop the entries coming inside defensive 50. I think that's really important for them. Of course, Harley Reid is going to come into this midfield mix, but maybe you're trying to get it to be, Reid, Kelly, Baker, or even Reid, Yeo, Baker. But you want to have, if you have Yeo and Reid in at the same centre bounces, you probably want Baker there. You don't want Kelly to be the third. And if you've got Kelly in there, it's probably either one of Yeo or Reid. So it's just about getting the balance right, because you want players to be able to find the ball from the largest sources that they can, and loose ball is a bit of a larger source than the hard ball. You just don't want to have to rely on that, albeit when you can get some hard ball wins, they can be really damaging clearances and you can score from those. As far as Bailey Williams goes, not a massive fan. He doesn't give them great looks and great opportunities to score with that really good synergy, but I think with, the contested players that they do have in there, and if they can add Baker in, who's a really good defensive foil, I think it works, and I think he's probably the front runner at the moment. You look over to the wings, and you've got Jaden Hunt there on the left. I think he's just going to keep doing his thing. He's, probably aging out in the next few years, but he's been a nice little pickup for them just to run that wing. He's got the speed and the endurance to be able to get up and back and just help them move the ball, which they have struggled with over the last couple of seasons. And then probably the more interesting one I've got there is Jack Hutchinson, who probably wasn't able to find the footy enough as a forward player. So could you move him onto the wing here and be a bit of a marking outlet coming out of defence as well? So Hunt, who's more of a runner, more of a ground ball player as a winger, if you use the light and shade there and go with Hutchinson on the other side, at least you get a bit of an opportunity to, mark the football, have an aerial presence coming out of defensive 50. And Hutchinson's also a really good runner as well. So he would give some dynamism off that other wing. And I think it works at least as a trial anyway. You move on then to the forwards, and that's where I've got Harley Reid there. So we'll start with him. He's obviously going to play big midfield minutes, of course, but I've just got him starting here. Not dissimilar to how Port Adelaide use someone like a Jason Horne-Francis. They often don't like using, say, Butters, Rosie, and Horne-Francis, and like to get the mix a little bit more defensively minded with someone like a Willem Drew. Think about it that way. And Harley Reid can start in the forward line, and he's going to cause headaches because he is such a good one-on-one player. And in this setup, he's almost playing as the third tall forward, really. You've got Oscar Allen there as kind of your deeper forward. You've got Jake Waterman, who likes to get up. He gets a few more inside 50s and a few more disposals, but still obviously really dangerous around goal with his marking power. And then you've sort of got Harley Reid as that third marking option. But if you have a look inside, you've also got Liam Ryan there, who does act as that little bit of a hybrid small forward. So I think with having a big contest winner and an aerial presence in Harley Reid, and then having the speed and the agility of someone like a Liam Ryan, That really works in this forward line. You've then got Owies as that more sort of pure small forward, the guy that's just going to try to hit the scoreboard, be really clinical in front of goal when you do get those entries. And he's also going to apply that defensive pressure as well, which is going to be really important. I think Harley spending some time forward, that can also give him some ability to practice his pressure game, get some forward 50 tackles and that sort of thing. And then I've got Jack Graham out there on the other half forward flank. I think he's perfect at playing that sort of high half forward role, a guy that gets up to stoppage, uses his endurance, two-way runner again to come back and forth, and he can sort of swap with Liam Baker in there as well, because they're quite similar players in just the way that they want to defend and go with the opposition's best. So I think that works really well as the on-field combination. I think overall, if you look at this forward line, probably the smalls, I like the balance of the smalls with this team, but it's probably lacking a little bit of quality. I was pretty big on West Coast even going for a small forward in the draft. I know they have a lot, but just getting that upper end quality, I think, is really important. We'll move on to the interchange to see who we've got coming in there. And I've got Bo Allen, of course, who is sort of that defender come midfielder. I think his versatility is going to be really important, and someone that at times he's a pretty similar player to Jinby, but he can probably swap in for a Jinby and come off half back. And you've got Duggan and players like that can rotate through, and you can give him some on-ball minutes in that as well. I've then got Jack Williams as that sort of, can play a little bit as a second ruck, but he can also be that other forward as well, whether you want to sort of move the magnets a little bit and have him as sort of a second tall and Waterman playing as a little bit more of a roamer, or you can have him playing as a roamer as well. So I think his versatility and ability to be able to, he's that little bit taller, so he can play in the ruck as well. Jamie Cripps there, again, another one of those, I guess, high half forward type players, but Cripps is a player that's shown that he can hit the scoreboard really regularly as well. So gives a little bit of experience to that forward line too, some of the younger players coming in. Elijah Hewitt, I think you just got to get games into this guy. I don't think it's really... Obviously, when you have midfielders coming off the bench like a Hewitt, it doesn't do great things for the balance. If you're going to throw Bo Allen into that midfield, who's also probably not an accumulator, someone with power, Jinby's probably going to have a few centre bouncers who's got power, and you've got Yo and you've got Harley Reid. It's just a little bit all power, no sort of... not nous, but just no sort of accumulation factor in the guys that can get from contest to contest. So I think it's going to be a little bit of inherent inconsistency in that. But I think guys like Hewitt, you do just have to get games into them. I think the ability to mix things around, and we'll go into this in a minute with some of the players that I've left out, some of those new recruits can come in and maybe play the accumulator role as well. The last player there, and I guess the sub I've got, is Petrocelli. I just think you have him there as a player that's quite versatile. He's got, really good speed. He's got really good running ability, and he can come in and sort of play as a winger as well. Obviously, that Jack Hutchinson wing is probably still up for grabs if he can't take that, but I like his talent level and being able to, probably the upside that he has that can, show himself in that position at AFL level. You can see there with the emergencies, I've got Harry Barnett, probably more structural than anything. I still think there is a player in Harry Barnett, but we just haven't been able to see it consistently yet. Dua as well as a small forward. I think he's going to get opportunities this season through injury, and I think he's pretty close to being able to make the best 23. And Campbell Chesser, who I probably think lacks a little bit of polish, lacks a little bit of talent, but he's probably one that has played some good footy at the top level and could probably find a niche as a small forward, as a bit of a shutdown forward or a small defender, something like that. So I don't mind him. We'll move on here to the notables that sort of aren't in the team. I've got quite an extensive list here. The first one being Brockman, who just hasn't been able to sort of settle in. I'm pretty surprised by his downfall. I do rate him as a player, and I think if he can sort of work his way into that 23, I think he can show something as a small forward and give them something a little bit electric, a little bit different, deep inside forward 50. Noah Long, I can't say, I don't really rate him as a player. I don't really know what he is. Is he a genuine small forward? Is he a sort of midfielder forward? I'm not too sure. I just can't really get him in. Tom Cole is sort of aging. Do you really need that experience at the moment when you've got so many young players that you want to get games into? Archer Reed's one that is coming, but just when you've got Allen and you've got Waterman, you probably can't really give him a game at the moment. And Job Shanahan's another one I haven't got here that probably falls into that unless there are some injuries. Now, here's some players that I think could genuinely make that best 23 by the start of the season, and that is Tom Gross, Luca Grego, and Hamish Davis, because all of these guys do give something a little bit different in the midfield to what West Coast have. Now, I think the positions at the moment are going to go to players like Graham and Baker that they've brought in the offseason, who are a little bit more experienced, a little bit older, and I guess just have those hardened bodies of playing AFL season after season. And these guys are going to have to earn their stripes in the waffle. But I think they are the type of players that if they can make an impression, have some good performances in the waffle, they can come in and just find the footy, get those 20, 25 disposal games going earlier on, and just show something so that West Coast can get the balance right, because I don't think long term you can really have a Yeo, Hewitt, Harley Reid type midfield. I just think it's too one way. It's too offensive, and they need to get some light and shade in there, essentially. Malachi Champion, I don't think he's going to start just with some of the small forwards ahead of him, but another one that will be pushing at some stage. Dom Sheed, I don't really know what's going on with Dom Sheed. Is his body right? Where does he really fit in as a modern AFL player? Like, could he play a half forward role? Could he play a wing role? Probably, but just not sure. He's not really a specialised player in that area. He's sort of a mid that's a bit slow. He's sort of phasing out of the game. And then you've got Clay Hall, who is another sort of big-bodied mid. And again, they've just got too many of that type, so I can't really get him in. I think at this point, they just need some sort of classy ball winners, guys that can just go through the midfield and sort of find the football and try to get some control in the game, whether that be by handball chain or just getting some uncontested possession, because that's an area that they have really struggled. So that is a wrap, guys, for my West Coast Eagles best 23. Now, putting it back onto you, who do you think I got right? Who do you think I got wrong? I'm sure everyone's got a slightly different opinion on this. That's just the team that I found for myself making it that probably has the best balance and gives them, you know, we talk about those archetypes and those different sort of player types, roles and skills and athleticism that players have to fulfill those roles. I think that one sort of works, and I've used a combination of the eye test and some data to try to sort of back that up. So let me know what you think, and let me know what you guys have as West Coast Eagles best 23, and I'll see you next time.